Yes, I don't know, a brief statement, but there is a hierarchy of some sort in God's system. The man is the head of the woman. That's quite clear. So your desire will be for your husband. That's in under normal, reasonable, natural circumstances. The woman's desire will be for her husband. She has this longing for her husband, admiration for her husband, looking up to her husband. But he has some degree of rulership over you, but that had better to be treated with extreme care. It doesn't give him the right to commandeer or to domineer. That's absolutely out of the question, because the new covenant says, husbands, love your wives, but wives should recognize that the husband is the head of the wife. So you balance those two things with great subtlety and great thought. Neither one must get out of hand, and we'll have happy marriages.
You know, the way many try and get out of this
Yeah.
is saying that, well, this has to do with the fact, the ruling part, the headship part is because of the fall. So we're fallen, and it's a curse. So it's not something good here. But then you quoted Paul, and it's First Corinthians 11:3. Paul puts it in the context of as in a good thing, right?
He does.
Because he says, I want you to know that Christ is the head of every man. The man is the head of the woman, or the husband is the head of the wife, and God is the head of Christ.
Right.
So you can't really get out of the fact that there is a hierarchy. The other one that comes to mind, Anthony, is 1 Timothy 3 and Titus 1. In the qualifications of the elder, you see there that Paul contrasts the church with the home. So one of the qualifications is the famous one woman man, or the husband of one wife.
Yes.
And then he says that the household must be competently controlled, and his children must be managed. And the context seems to be of a male leadership, is it not?
It does, I think so. My view, for what it's worth, is that Paul did not burden the women with, where the buck stops, so to speak, leadership in the church. In Hebrews, it says that you're to obey your rulers. We don't always take that very seriously today. We probably should do more. But the man in charge of the church, the elder, or plural elders as it may be, are to have some degree of authority, and people are to obey him. And so I don't think Paul burdened. I'd put it this way. You've noticed that the women bear the children, the men don't. The woman's main responsibility then is to the children, and Paul doesn't burden the woman with the leadership position, which would interfere with her very important role as bearer of children. Now, I think Paul certainly allowed women to teach and even to encourage, to prophesy. Otherwise, I would have to say the gifts were not given to the women. I don't think that's true. So women can prophesy, meaning encourage and build up and speak, certainly in the presence of men. But I doubt if they were to be positioned as the elder who has a responsibility of obedience from his congregation. That seems to be the balance of what Paul says.
The First Timothy letter in chapter 2, actually, the one that precedes chapter 3, it ends thus. A woman should learn in silence with full submission. I don't allow a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. Instead, she's to be silent. For Adam was created first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and transgressed. But she will be saved through childbearing if she continues in faith, love, holiness, with good judgment.
That's not so easy, because that would mean then that what he says in 1 Corinthians 12 through 14 would not be right, where a woman is allowed to teach and prophesy, meaning encouragement, quite clearly. She's given the gifts the same way as men are. So I think that in Timothy, a special situation has probably arisen where the women were unruly, and to be silent may not be exactly that, because that same word, keeping silent, is used of men, I think, at the workplace or in other circumstances. They're to be respectful and submissive to their authorities. So I would look at other translations which wouldn't word it quite that way to attempt a harmonization, but I fully grant the difficulty.
The chapter breaks, the verse and chapter breaks are not obviously in the manuscript. So if we take away the chapter breaks, I think the context here is of the eldership role, because then Paul goes on to talk, the silence and so on must be in the context of the eldership role, the leadership role in the church. Then it wouldn't make sense for then Paul
That's
to
right.
saying like letters to the Corinthians,
Yes.
that the woman obviously has a teaching
Right.
quality to
Right.
edify the church.
That's right. And also the one in Corinthians where it says that she should keep quiet and ask her husband at home. That may be a complete misunderstanding, as F.F. Bruce even suggested, because if she's only to speak at home and ask her husbands, it makes nonsense of the rest of that passage. So that statement about remaining quiet except at home and asking her husband, that may be their question to him rather than his statement. Sometimes that happens in Corinthians. It isn't clear. Is Paul quoting their question or is he making a statement? It's possible. And F.F. Bruce, I think, believed this, that was their suggestion. Are we to make the women, shouldn't the women only go home and ask their husbands at home? Heaven forbid, Paul says. That's not what we do. So there's a complete possible misunderstanding in that passage. All we're trying to do is to harmonize difficult issues here.
This 1 Corinthians 14, some commentators say that this passage is out of order or something because some of the manuscripts, either this passage is moved further down or something, or it's...
That's true. And
so it could be a manuscript issue.
It could be a manuscript issue. I'm not a past master of that. I do think that being the husband of one wife is rather decisive in terms of male leadership. In other words, the elder who is to be obeyed should not be a woman who's supposed to give orders to the congregation, including her husband and other males, probably somewhere there.